Happy New Year's Day to all of you guys. The firecrackers are going out outside, so it might be a little, some of the audio might be a little crackly, but that's okay. That's not why I do these videos. I do these videos to think through my ideas, to try to explain it to you in a eloquent and persuasive manner, so I can get better at my arguments to understand the world better, right? If you just keep all your thoughts in here bundled up, they never the ideas never come to fruition. And since you're not speaking or writing it, that skill of speaking in front of people and that skill of writing never gets attuned to try to match what is up here, right? So that's at least my reasoning for why the ideas that seem so clear up here are so hard to articulate, because articulation, speech, and writing are skills you have to practice. They might come naturally to you, right? Speaking in whatever tongue you are, but speaking in front of the camera, trying to articulate your ideas, understand these ideas, digest these ideas, and to distill it to someone else for them to understand. All of that is skills that you have to work on. By the way, Waterloo, awesome. Love Waterloo. I didn't know I was already going to get on my soapbox, but apparently I am. But today, besides my stomach digesting my food, I wanted to talk a little bit about, maybe not a long video, but I want to mention and talk about how the presence of a omniscient entity is almost in every religion or philosophy that at least I have studied so far. So what do I mean? So think of it like, I think the best example to start with is the Fates from Greek and Roman mythology. And if you don't know what the Fates are three sisters who weave fate. So they determine who dies, what mortals die, but also what Greek and Roman gods die. They also weave in all the events, everything that happens within life in the universe. So it's something that's influences even the gods. Now, or not even influences, affects the gods. It's beyond the control of the Greek and Roman gods, to the point that it affects everything. It intertwines. It's interesting, the fates. It's almost like they're always, a lot of them are depicted with strings, and they're weaving these events together. And that's an interesting concept, because it's almost like every event is supposed to be woven together, and every death and every event and every occurrence and every birth was meant for something. It was meant to create this picture of weaving. And that's what Marcus Aurelius talks about in his Meditations. And here's another one, a different philosophy, right? So we had the Greek and Roman and gods, right? But now we have the Roman philosophy of, well, I don't want to say Roman philosophy because Epictetus was Greek, but the Greco-Roman philosophy of Stoicism, right? I gotta stop saying right. I've noticed that a lot. But of the Greco-Roman Stoicism. And it's interesting because back during the Greeks and the Romans, philosophy wasn't the same as it is now. Philosophy now is mainly thought of as academic in the academia, right? They think of big ideas. I, they think of the general ideas of society, how it's constructed, all the big questions, right? It's for the academia, and then for the normal everyday person, they have religion or moral laws to live by. Back in the day, you didn't have uh, where religion was how you uh, lived your life. It didn't have religion as in the Greek and Roman gods, and the that religion didn't have moral dictums that you should live by, or moral laws like it lived by, not like the 10 commandments of the Bible, right? So in place of these morals, they had philosophy. So philosophy was more of a practice, it was practical. And that's where Stoicism comes in. It was for Marcus Aurelius and for Epictetus and for Seneca, it was something practical they used. Is something that, in devoid of religion telling them what to do, philosophy was how they lived their lives. And within Stoicism, you have what's called the Logos, and at least how Marcus Aurelius explains it, the Logos is a lot like the Fates. It's a lot like the universe is having a plan, not even a plan, but everything happening in life is perpetuated by the logos in the present moment. There is no randomness. Everything happens for a reason. I'm not being cliche, right? But that's that similar theme, the fates in the Greco-Romans, and then the logos in Stoicism. And it extends beyond that. And it's even more interesting because we've been talking about Western philosophy, right? Old Western philosophy, the ones before Christianity, before our Judaism got very big and prominent in Western culture. But now let's go to Eastern, where there was very limited uh, communication between Western and Eastern culture during the Romans, right? During the days of Buddha, during the days of Confucius, and especially the um, days of Lao Tzu, with his writing of the Tao Te Ching, Tao Te Ching, Tao Te Ting, Tao Te Ting. The Tao Te Ching. There you go. I got it. The Tao Te Ching. Um, Now I don't know specifically how much connections they had or how much contact they had. I know the Silk Road was something that connected the two, but other than that, I don't. And then Marco Polo, of course, but I don't know the years, don't know the time period, don't know any to an extent. But what's really interesting with Lao Tzu especially, is this idea of life happening, life being ever present beyond our understanding, that it has some kind of reasoning behind a complete chaos, is what the Tao is in the Taoist philosophy. That's what they talk about in the Tao Te Ching, is the Tao being this unexplainable entity that is all and lives through all, but is neither here nor there. It is everything but nothing. And since it is everything but nothing, it pretty much allows for meaning in this world. Not meaning, but more like meaning to the events that happen and the occurrences that happen, because the Tao is the one that is securing. It's the one that is pushing through life. And it talks a lot about how men and a woman need to follow in the Tao's footsteps of how nature is, supposed to be like, right? This reminds me a little bit about the discussion of good and evil, where my argument would be, sorry, I think if I do this, it doesn't get through to the mic, but besides the point, like the discussion of good and evil, where I would argue evil is just a product from humans. And maybe, I haven't really thought about this one, but because of our self-awareness of ourselves and our need to preserve it, right? We can go back to Puss in Boots. I told you I was going to go back. It's just so good. But this idea of evil, or this idea of being a bad person, is such a critical, because of our fears and our realization of death. It's such a critical point in Puss in Boots. And Puss in Boots, Puss is always running from death. All his bad decisions come from his fears, right? It's his fear of getting married and losing his legendary status. It's his fear of death that pushes him into this retirement stage, this not even living a life, just eating and sleeping. It pushes him into, at the last scenes of the film, to run away from his friends, right? To say, no, I actually need these 9 lives. Like, I'm gonna die. It's my fear. And that's all comes from that self-awareness of your death, right? And from that self-awareness comes that fear. And that fear is what constitutes a lot of the evil or the bad decisions we find in this world. So, and then other things as well, like certainty in our beliefs and what we believe, indifference, just complete and utter indifference to humanity, not caring at all for anyone else. That goes, I don't know. I still need to think about the self-awareness part and if that plays into indifference, but definitely a biological, right? Sometimes people take a lot of drugs, screw up their brain, and then they can't think straight, unfortunately. And then the last one is fear. Just what we do with fear, especially the fear of death. And so that talks a little bit about the good and evil, and going back to I think I lost a little bit of my train of thought, but going back to the good and evil, and then the Tao, right? Everything happening for a reason. That's what I was trying to say. For the Tao, that the Tao is always good. It doesn't, and there's no act that it does that is evil. And one example of that is something like a deer or a lion, right? Oh, no, stop saying that, Matthew. A lion or deer. When a lion goes and eats a deer, it's not doing it because it wants to be cruel. It does it to survive. It does it to eat, to provide for its family. So in that sense, killing and death is something that's sustaining. It's sustaining life. So that goes back to the fates, that goes back to the logos, that goes back to the Tao, that everything ends, and it happens beyond our understanding. And are not necessarily evil because we're the ones who produce evil. It just is how it is. And thus the last example is God in our Western culture, like uh, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is the idea of God. And in the Bible, it talks a lot about, or there's one specific quote, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it talks about how you might walk, but God navigates your steps. Essentially saying that you do have free will, but at the end of the day, God is navigating you through life as well. As well. And whatever happens, He has ordained it and He has foreseen it. Even though, He's giving you free will to do what you want, He knows what will happen. And perhaps it's more of just us in the present moment. He knows what will happen, but He's also part of everything else, of love and life. This is one aspect where I don't necessarily agree with Christians. Has this been crooked the whole time? Maybe. Anyways, has one aspect where I don't necessarily agree with the Christians of the dichotomy between God as life and the devil as death. I just don't see that in life, especially when you see quotes from Auschwitz prisoners like Eli Wiesel who talk about how the opposite of is not death, it is indifference. And seeing nature at work, and like I was explaining with the lion, how killing is and the deer's death is actually a sustaining of life as well, sustaining the life of the lion, sustaining the life of its family. Same with us, right? When we eat, it's sustaining us. We're eating plants, they're alive. We're eating meat, we're alive too. But we eat them to sustain ourselves as well. So that's why I don't think the Christian and Judaism and Muslim argument is very sound about that division, because it seems more that just inactivity and indifference is the opposite of life rather than devil being death, right? But let's go back to our argument. And so you see in at least for me, four different philosophies and religions: the Greco-Roman gods, the Stoics, the Taoist, and Christians, Islams, and not Buddhists. Christians, Islams, and Jews, how they have this concept of an entity that is continuously weaving the present events beyond our control. Yet, of course, they talk about our choices and our actions, right? And how we affect fate as well. I think I talked about this a while ago, but it's the argument of whether we have free will or determinism is not an intuitive argument because it's both. We act on the world, and the world acts on us, and it's simultaneous. It's not we act fully on the world. It's not the environment acts fully on us. It's reciprocal, and it's always in flux. It's always intermingled. There's no like 40% free will, 60% free will. Okay, now it's 80% free will, 20%. And no, life is way too complicated to put into those terms. At least for human and cognition, I would argue. Just like, yeah, and let's leave it at that. So, it's interesting, that idea of determinism throughout all of these religions. And it leads me to believe it's so many religions, if so many philosophies have this same idea, then it stands to reason that, let me rephrase that. If all these morals, all systems, philosophies, and religions that have stood the test of time to still be here and be relevant today are all saying the same thing, then for me, it's something I need to think about. It's something I need to seriously consider as maybe being a truth and being something I believe in. So, interesting stuff. It's not going to be, this isn't going to be a video I put up. This was definitely more of my thoughts, and thinking through my thoughts and trying to understand the world a little bit better. So thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great New Year's. Even if you're alone, just listen to this video or pop open a book or enjoy the fireworks. If you're with people, have a good time. Or if you already saw this video, days after, hope you all had a good time. I certainly did. But anyways, y'all have a good night. Bye.